Frenzy Podcast.
Hey, how's it going, my friends? This is Nick from the Nerd Frenzy Podcast. And today, we get to talk about Marvel Phase 4. And we have the pleasure of talking to the wonderfully talented, the beautiful, the slim, in a manly way, Scott Winter. Hey, buddy.
Nick, thank you. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah.
So I want everybody to know, we got a little past history, right? So this goes all the way back to the early 2000s. I was a teacher in Rifle, and Nick was a student, and did some musicals, and Nick was right there singing and dancing, and did a little cross country. It was awesome. So
Yeah.
This awesome reunion. Now we get to really talk about the craziness of Marvel and the beauty of it too, right?
Yes, and this started just like a few years after that whole kind of thing went down. It was, what, 2009 or something around there, I believe, and it all started with the idea of like Iron Man, and they actually had this idea, like, let's go ahead and have stages, and let's have like throughout the years, let's have phases, and let's have this big old elongated story that's going to like be this big old journey for people. It's gonna be 20, 30 years, who knows how long. It's going to be amazing. And let's take our time with this, and let's try to make this precious baby. And now we are in phase 4, and Scott, there's something like all this time. I remember whenever you were teaching us, it was like the Spider-Man days. The first Spider-Man came out, and that was like, it was good. It's like, oh, cool, because you had Blade, and then like X-Men, and then Spider-Man. It's like, oh, hey, guess what, guys? It is possible to make a successful comic book movie. And then now we are here where there's someone like, hey, let's talk about making these things for 20 plus years with phases. And you would think that sounds maybe be careful, but then now here we are, and everything is still refreshing.
Oh, absolutely, right? Yeah, and you're right. Spider-Man, and then Iron Man comes out, and it's like, okay, that's an odd jump from one of your classic, your Spider-Man. Hulk, right, was out prior to that.
Yep,
But,
the Eric Bana version, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and but they had that end credit. What you mean? There's a scene at the end while the credits are rolling. What kind of
What is this?
Just
Yeah.
this wild stuff. Exactly, and there's Tony Stark, and it's like, well, wait a minute. If we're watching Iron Man now, but they did Hulk before, there's a connection here, and so that is another piece, right, where they started connecting and tying all the movies in, where almost stringing them together. What an awesome concept! And so, heck, opening nights, there I was through the years, and so I started dragging all my kids to them, and it's been an awesome ride. And now, yeah, so here we are, phase 4 now.
Phase
Off
4.
and running. No less.
And by the way, when you were introducing that beautiful origin story of you and I, you left out the part. This guy was like, I met him. I think I met you. I believe it was at cross country. It was at our first practice of cross country, and I told you, oh, by the way, I'm the vice president of our drama club too. And yeah, so I was kind of already like, like showing off my, I'm the guy. So just to let you know, I'm that guy. And we made Guys and Dolls, and it was a wonderful experience. It was I got to play Nate in Detroit, which is and of course Frank Sinatra,
Yes.
the man, the myth, legend. So you let me play that part, and then this is also I'm also like running for you too, like come on Nick, did you have your energy bar? And this is all like around the same time, and I'm just a 17-year-old laddie, and I'm just trying to just so thank you for being a part of my very important part of my life, and I very much appreciate everything. So thank you.
Well, hey, and I have to return the thanks too. You were great. Uh, you mentioned Nathan Detroit. You were fantastic in that. And that was
I'll
one of
take
kind of
it.
the biggest shows that we started with when I first got there, right? And we had a great time doing that, and a lot of great memories from that. A lot of miles running all over the place.
Hmm.
And I know you've had David Szymanski on here. He
Uh-huh.
was on the team,
Yeah, yeah.
and yeah, it was great. But and what's really cool is what, three of you, four of you went off into the military after graduation. That was fantastic as well. So let me also say thank you for your service.
Oh,
That's amazing for you to
of
go off
course,
and
of course.
and be be in service to our country. So thank you, and thank you to all of our men and women in the service right now, especially those
Absolutely.
Marvel fans, right?
Nip high football rules or whatever. Nip high football
That's
rules.
right.
Yeah, and actually, I've been the last, I think, 4 or 5 times been putting out a little thing for William Hammond Boyce Jr. They have that pyro run for him every single year. It's on August 14th at 8 a.m. And the cool thing about it is the money goes, 100% of it goes to a brand new pilot to like help him get his wings faster. And so you can do a virtual run too, and just I think it's $35, and then just run wherever you are, and then it all goes to the good stuff. So I was going to I've been telling
Yeah.
all my nerd frenzy friends to, if they can do it, please,
Do it.
absolutely.
Well, I'm still running, and I plan on actually doing the virtual. But man, how cool it would be to kind of get all of us back together again and go run that thing. It
Oh,
might not turn out well for some.
uh,
But,
yeah,
it would be a blast.
funny enough, my friend Doug Humble, Tim Meskel, and Andrew George, they always run it with
Yeah.
us. Yeah, every single year.
Oh,
They couldn't do it last year, but they've never missed. And Doug came last year, but yeah, they've been there every single time. So when you go to one of these things too,
perfect.
it's the coolest thing. It's obviously William himself. He did this thing back in high school. It's something I love telling the story because it's always something that's it's a very big deal about William. And that was, he did this thing where he would find people in high school, and a lot of times it was in drama actually, or in the musicals, or in the plays, that had no friends, and he would always invite them to come to come hang out with all of us. And then that's how a lot of them end up kind of just getting their journey started with, and it was all because William would kind of be that kind of person. So he was, like I always tell people, he was a hero before he even put the uniform on. So
He was a good guy. I remember him coming out, and he ran track, right? And
hmm
he ran the
he did
800. So
soccer. Yeah, and
he
yeah.
and all that. He just come running up and just talk to me the whole time. And I'm thinking,
Yeah.
this guy's, first of all, keeping up with me, and second of all, he hasn't stopped talking yet.
And it was funny because he was like
He had a
8 foot
great
2. Yeah.
spirit about him.
Oh, he did. And
Oh yeah, good guy.
he was just this lanky,
And
weird guy who would take
we
a
had
step.
him right. We had him as well too.
Mm. But
Good.
absolutely, but it's something that I love to talk about, and I put a little all the information up for everyone to see and stuff, and it's just whatever I can do, because I know a lot of his pilot friends, and they're all just badasses. So it's nice to
Well,
know that where it all goes to. So
good. Well, good on you, man.
oh no, yeah,
Get out and run that thing, folks. Let's do it. Let's do
yeah,
it.
yeah. I'll look better than some. I'll look better than some, but I'll have my kids, and I'll use that as an excuse to jog it or something.
That's perfect.
That's right. That's right. I'm a man's man. Okay. Okay. Anyways, my friend. Anyways. Okay. So, phase 4. It started off.
Yeah.
I believe was it WandaVision that started the whole thing off?
Yeah, so and because of COVID, it should have been Black Widow, right? So
Yep.
we've got Black Widow coming out,
Tomorrow, actually.
at the time of, but yeah,
It'll be
that's
passed. Yeah,
tomorrow.
it'll
So
be like
that's
2 days
it's
before.
midnight tonight,
Yeah.
for the
Yeah, so
diehards. Which I thought about it, but nah, I'll go when everybody else goes tomorrow. But so Black Widow should have kicked off. However, you're right. WandaVision kicks it off.
Mhm.
Falcon Winter Soldier, and then we've got Loki going on
Ugh.
right now. So all those are starting to. They are all weaving in together as well now, and we'll see how Black Widow kicks that in. Obviously you look at the comics, right, as the basis of all these different characters. Now they tie in, and they're totally setting up the whole next, like Young Avengers is coming, and Yelena Belova is the next Black Widow. So it's we're very much into the whole like next phase, outside of just Phase 4, but the next phase of the principal superheroes now.
Yes, and okay. Do you think that they should have maybe done Black Widow like 5 years ago though, or do you think this is a perfect time?
Well, it's tricky. Everybody's obviously always been talking about Black Widow should have a standalone
Agreed.
movie, and I
Agreed.
totally agree with that. And I like where they put it. Right, it's right after Civil War, so she's on the run. That's the last time we saw her. Is she and Cap, Sam visiting the grave, right, of Nick Fury, and basically they're going off into the underground. Next time we see Cap too is in Infinity War. Has been underground. It's been 2 years, and so they're kind of splitting up and getting away from the Sokovia Accord. So, Marvel's great about retconning a lot of things. So it doesn't
Yes.
matter when they kind of jump in. It's perfect. We get to see Red Guardian. That's pretty sweet coming out, and I'm just excited to see how they're going to take all these different pieces, both the movie and now the TV shows, and bring those elements together and continue those stories wherever they might wind up now.
Mm. Well, and one great thing, Scott, is they started off for the three TV shows they've done so far. They started off pretty dang strong. I mean, there is definitely flaws, and I'll definitely talk about that in a little bit. But for the most part, what a strong attempt for the start of Phase 4.
Oh, amazing, right? So WandaVision, that was amazing in itself. It was weird. It was totally different concept for your typical Marvel, right?
Yeah.
How they rolled out most of these. And there's debate right now if like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or Luke Cage are those canon within the MCU. But they really, really took to steal from Loki a whole new branch of the of these movie ideas and these characters, and kind of give us a little more up and personal look at Wanda, at the end after losing Vision, and what that really looks like. Because it was at first it was kind of hard to follow. Well, where's Vision in all this? But as you kind of kept in mind, right, that idea of Wanda, this is all in her head. This is her grieving, and so that in itself, right, talking about how different people grieve. We just saw that someone gets killed or something blows up, and then I'm sad a little bit. Now I'm gonna go fight again. WandaVision really took a departure and just really settled into that kind of how do we grieve? What elements come up within our grief process? And so good job on Marvel for kind of tackling that aspect of us as humans and our development. How they brought in that mental. Really, it's mental health, right? And how different people grieve, and how they focus in on that development of Wanda within her grief, and even how it affects her superpowers, and changes it, right? The cool part about, especially towards the end, is we kind of get this idea. She sees this vision of herself, right? That's that glowing vision. And really, that's when we finally get to see her as the Scarlet Witch. And I remember even watching that. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Actually, this is the first time that we ever hear her referred to as the Scarlet Witch,
Yep.
away from Wanda. It's always Wanda. It's always Wanda. You know, and I was like, oh, that's kind of bonkers in itself.
Yes,
So
yes.
that was super fun.
And the cool thing about that too, Scott, is one really cool thing about Marvel in general is they try to stay away from saying superhero names, and they might do it in a silly way, like when Peter Parker in Infinity War is like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" He's like, "What, I'm Peter Parker," and he goes, "Oh, I'm Doctor Strange," and he goes, "Oh, we used our made up names. Oh, okay, well, I'm Spider Man."
I'm Peter, by the way.
Doctor Strange.
Oh, you're using your made-up names. Then I am Spider-Man.
I was just like, okay, well, that's great, but but don't just be walking around and be like, hey, how's it going? I'm Spider Man, unless it's part of the whole joke of what makes your character great, and which of course Spider Man that would
Yeah,
be the situation. But oh yeah, it's fun to see that definitely.
absolutely. Yeah. So seeing that and the end credit scene too, with the last episode of her, going through and teaching herself kind of those little darker arts, in the same format that you would see Doctor Strange. Oh, that was mind blowing. I'm super glad that they kept Doctor Strange out,
The,
because it just kind of sweetens the pot now as we move into the what is it, Multiverse of Madness.
but they did. I guess they changed at the very end whenever it's zooming into, which I'm sure you know about. They changed a little glimmer that could have been him, just to kind of like spice things up and just say, hey everyone, guess what? Like I'm gonna give you a little tickle and just let you know that is it Doctor Strange? I was like, oh you piece of crap.
Yeah, them going back and with it, but it's funny, right? Because you go back to like Star Wars. I'll bring that in. George
Always,
Lucas
please.
going and fiddling with the movies. Everybody's like, quit doing that. Hand shot first, or whatever it is. Jabba the Hutt looks weird. Now he looks weirder. Okay, the third version's better now in New Hope. But now Marvel's coming in, changing some things. Like, oh yeah, that's okay. So I think that's hysterical, actually, to see how that mindset is somewhat changed throughout time within that, where George Lucas is getting crucified for it, and Kevin Feige is like, "That's fine, you get to do that."
Oh,
But it's smart, because if they're going to interconnect all these shows and the movies and everything, they have to be right. And so there's still a whole bunch that's out there, that are they're throwing off the timeline, or throwing off what they've said in the past, and they need to address it. And so that'll be fun to see how they come back and do that. I got a feeling, right? The biggest one was 8 years later in the last Spider-Man movie, or actually the first Spider-Man movie, but we've got a new Spider-Man coming up, and I can totally see them addressing that right away, and getting everything right back on the timeline.
oh yeah, you're absolutely right, and it's what an easy way of fixing things. Piece of cake. Yeah, yeah. You rascals.
Hey
Oh,
boys, what are you doing?
but yeah,
Uh,
but no, but I remember when I was watching WandaVision, like I say the first two episodes. At first, I was sitting there going, "Oh, cool! It's refreshing. It's like I Love Lucy or anything that like Bewitched. Like, okay, this I love this kind of stuff." And then after a while, you're like, "Okay, can you tell me what's going on, please?" Because you guys are a Marvel movie, and I appreciate your artistic values that you're doing. I hear you guys are filming in the actual camera and all. Good for you, but can you guys pick it up, please? And then the moment you get that slam on episode at the end, well, first of all, at the end of season episode 3, when you get that little bit like, oh, okay, and then all of a sudden, the start of episode 4, you see Monica just wake up, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, you're part of that. You're part of that coming back 5 years later thing. Oh my gosh. I mean, and then it starts connecting. All of a sudden, next thing you know, oh, Marvel, you rascals, you got me again. I thought I was a little nervous about this not really being a good show, and then all of a sudden I was like, okay, I'm listening. And then you see that the acting wasn't hammy and corny, and I know that was on purpose, but
right.
still, after a while, I'm like, hey guys, can you guys do something? And then all of a sudden, the whole like how it's all cracking, like like she's trying her best, like you said, with grief, but sadly, her having all these situations she has to go through, we have to see them unfold, actually like and actually manifest. And I don't know how you feel about this, my friend, but I personally, and I know first of all, I'm a big fan of Agatha, and I know that she's actually gonna, supposed to be a mentor at times. She's good, and then she's bad. She's kind of like back and forth.
Right.
But she probably will be a mentor eventually. And big fan of Catherine Hahn. But I felt like she was not the villain, and it was definitely Wanda. It was definitely Wanda. And people are like, no, but Wanda's a superhero. I'm like, no, I get that, but she did all this stuff to people, and then she enslaved a whole like town, and we're supposed to like be like, oh, but she's under, she's stressed out and she's sad though. I'm like, well, but did you see all the tears coming from the people that were, it's like this is not right. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
No,
What do
I'm
you
glad
think?
you go back to the comics, and that's where I got a lot of mine. I mean, right? I read the comics when I was a kid, and all the way up and through college, for that matter, because you get into some of the later Cap and Guardians of the Galaxy and all that. It went up into the late 80s, into the mid 90s, for that matter. And so you see them go back and forth. They might be jumping in with the Avengers, and then they're part of like Leviathan, and then they go and now they're part of West Coast Avengers. So you get this back and forth, yeah. So I like how they kind of captured that with Catherine Hahn, with Agatha in that. But how awesome, Agatha all along. That was such a cool montage of bringing her character back around.
Yep.
But Nick, you said the other thing too, was super important, is Wanda. She was the villain. She really was. You're gonna go and you're gonna craft a whole like town and reality, for crying out loud, to deal with your grief. But then you have real people entering into that.
Yeah.
Right. So Monica Rambeau, how genius was that to put her at the end of the blip, grown up now, which she would have been after being a kid in Captain Marvel. And just getting chucked around, and then they introduce Sword, and it's like, oh my gosh, they're setting up so many little pieces.
Yep.
But
Spiderweb.
the crux of this, the nucleus, is her.
Yes.
She's messing with all kinds of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and Catherine Hahn simply, Agatha just taking advantage of all that, and because she knows that her power is super strong.
I know. It's like, can you teach me these things almost? Yeah, but I felt also that, and it being Disney, and I know this is me. It's a problem that I have, but after watching shows like Game of Thrones, I want all quality to be like Game of Thrones, and when I saw like the whole witch scene, I just, in my mind, told me it could have been so much like more like intense and scary, and I know that movies can do that, like Witches with Angelica Houston. That movie was PG, and it scared the crap out of me, and
Oh yeah.
so I mean it's definitely possible to do that, but I felt like they kind of canned it up because it was a Disney thing, and I felt, well, you guys can still get away with doing a lot of things. It just can't be I don't know, like disturbing, but it can definitally be like eerie and whatnot. But I think Catherine Hahn herself, awesome.
Yeah, I always think back to Ultron, Age of Ultron, right? One of the kind of issues I had, just kind of throughout all phases, all the movies, they hurry a lot of their storylines up, or they hurry up their characterization of all the bad guys.
Yep.
It'd be nice to see them take a little more time. I mean, to go in and the way they developed Ultron and the why was done in like 20 minutes of the whole movie. And I was like, oh, no, they're missing so many elements of that. And so you're right, that section with the witches was fun, but it could have been so much more and thicker in the sense of just how that really encapsulates Agatha. Because that was a moment where they could have developed her almost to a parallel with Wanda.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And you got to see this. Oh my gosh, we really do have an equal playing field here. And a lot of times with Marvel, they want to knock off their bad guys super fast to keep their heroes just a little bit above all the different bad guys. But we're starting to see that slow down a little bit now with the TV shows. So if you don't mind, I'll segue now. Falcon and the Winter Soldier. and all the time they spent setting up Zemo was a blast.
Yes, it was.
And in of course in the comics, Zemo gets into the Thunderbirds, right? Thunderbolts.
Thunderbolts.
Thunderbirds. I'm thinking of the other comic. Thunderbolts. Yeah. So it becomes kind of the leader of them, but they gave him a lot of time to set up this alliance back and forth, and how he again kind of the psychological side of wrapping you in, to a point where he's on our side, boom, and then he goes off to left field, and then they got to chase after him and fix all his mess, and then they circle back around again, and so that was a lot of fun too, and wrapped up into Sam kind of taking on the mantle again, being very reluctant, but also Bucky just trying to figure out where in the world he fits in all this mess. So yeah, Marvel's getting a little more heady with this new phase now.
Yes, and they should, because and I think this was a gripe with a lot of people for Endgame. Even though I think everyone said that Endgame was great, but they said the gripe was it was kind of a depressing movie, and I'm thinking, well, what do you expect? Half the world has died. If they just kind of act like they do in a lot of these dumb movies, like throwaway movies, where it's just like, oh, half the world's destroyed, and 45 minutes later we're all okay, and I'm like, no, that's stupid. That's not how humans are at all. How about you show the real thing? And Endgame did it, where everyone was broken, and especially Iron Man. He was hurt to the point where he's like, hey, I don't, leave me alone, and I don't want to help you. I mean, and they're like, hey, well, we think we have a sure thing, and he's just like, oh, guys, come on, stop. And it's just, but you see that from every single character, and I remember thinking, oh, I see like Oscar-nominated performances in these roles here, and a lot of people are like, oh, it's dark, it's just dark. I'm like, well, I mean, reality is dark too. I'm sorry, it's it's not always happy.
No, they did a good job with Tony Stark, because you can go all the way back, because there's a little animosity right from the top when very first time he flies in, when Loki, right when they're in Germany, and he comes in, Cap, it's real kind of curt, and but later on in Civil War, where they're going after it with each other when they're chopping wood, and then later on in the fight, and he says, I was your friend,
but he's my friend, so was I.
That was like, oh my gosh, you forget that,
yes.
They're not just dudes on a team fighting the bad guys, but they did kind of take care and cared for each other, and you get into Infinity War, and Tony almost just rolled over and gave up.
Yes.
Right? And when everybody with a snap, and so we see him now in Endgame just shut down. He's got a family. That's his new thing. But you see little elements of him that he's been kind of working on something. A lot of people think that it was Scott Lang coming in and saying, hey, Quantum Realm. Tony Stark was working on that before that, and that was just the last ingredient that he needed within the quantum realm, and that idea of time travel, right, for him to get that loop figured out, the time loop, and that was fun too, to see how they developed that, because you could see exactly where that was going too, right? So this idea of time travel keeps kind of popping up slowly at first, bubbling along, and now phase 4 is all about that, and that's pretty fun. It's not unexpected, I think is probably the right word. If you look at X-Men, right, Days of Future Past, they did the exact same thing. They basically took all elements so they could create whatever timeline they wanted to, and I remember watching that movie and going, oh man, that's genius.
That movie was superior, by the way. That Days of Future Past was the best X-Men movie.
Yeah, of the X-Men, yeah.
Yes.
Logan
is Logan. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I named my kid
That's
Logan.
a whole different one. Yeah, exactly right. I tried. That didn't happen on
Oh no, that's one thing. I was like, oh,
Nah, it's
it had to be that.
it's all these things. Yeah, I was going for Luke at first, and that was shot down. So I thought I'd jump into Marvel and go after Logan, but Aiden's good enough. Aiden worked.
Sorry, Aiden. He loves you
Yeah,
equally.
I know, right? Right, well, yeah. Oh, shoot.
um,
Now,
but
we get into kind of the fringes of the beginning of Phase 4 is it's been just fun. Loki's crazy good.
oh yes,
Um,
sir.
I'm having a lot of fun with that, all the different Lokis and the TVA, right? TVA it was in the comics too, and there's a lot of stuff that they're setting up. But I'm trying to be a little bit skeptical watching this because Marvel tries to make things look obvious, but obviously pointing at this direction. And if we learn anything, especially from WandaVision, that's not the truth at all. It's some misdirection. So, but I think eventually a lot of stuff we're seeing get set up in Loki will start pointing towards Kang, right? Kang the Conqueror.
Yes,
Is kind
which
of the
Owen
next big
Wilson.
baddie.
He was told. We were told that Owen Wilson was be playing King, and I remember thinking, no, I don't want that. I mean, I like Owen Wilson. I just can't. Oh, hey guys, I just want to. I'm everyone's best friend, and it's like, well, yeah, you can be my best friend too, but I mean, you're not playing King. There's no way. You can play Mobius.
That's a little bit. Yeah, exactly, right. On now, like, we're Vince Vaughn. Hey, come on, guys. Who's he gonna be? So yeah, but everything's pointing that way. But I think eventually, of course, we're gonna see Kang the Conqueror. That's a big
yes.
storyline in comics. They can't not do it. Right? They've had Dormammu already. Dormammu.
Yep. Which I wonder,
Thanos.
are they going to revisit Dormammu? How do you say it? Dormo?
Dormammu. Yeah.
Dormammu.
So now, yeah. So here's another branch off of this within Phase 4. So Dormammu, Thanos, those guys are they're Eternals, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
The Celestials. Yeah. And so we've got these little elements all just kind of set up way back of, hey, let's pop this in here. So Dormammu, once again, when I saw that in Doctor Strange, I'm like, well, that was fast. But again, I think now what we have, they're going to totally revisit that.
Okay, good.
Probably within the realm of the Eternals movies coming up. They have to talk about them and how they fit into that, right? Because the movie that's coming up is just the Eternals that live on Earth. But there's Eternals that are on all planets, all over the place, created by the Celestials, right? They create all these beings, these superior beings, to kind of pass on their knowledge and their power within all these different worlds throughout the universe. So they have to bring them back. Absolutely, that's going to be fun too.
Well,
so all these new things coming up, yeah.
Thanos. I love talking about Thanos because I find, I mean, there's some good villains, but Thanos is without a doubt maybe like the best written one we've had so far with actual meaning behind his actions. And I love it's like he's kind of like a Malcolm X. He thinks he is, at least. He's kind of like the healer. Like, I'm trying to help you people, and those kind of any kind of villain that has that kind of ideology, you can't help but be like, well, yeah, I get what you're saying.
Absolutely, he's kind of a philosopher, right? And so what's crazy, he tries to convince everybody that snapping out half the population is needed. And that's insanity of itself,
right?
And so there's hints, but I love the philosophical kind of side and bent to him. It would be really cool if they would have had some scenes where Vision and him went at it. You know,
Ooh.
bringing in some of the the very right and but at the same time, you kind of there's elements, I guess, of that, right? Because just the creation of Vision alone, even though it's Tony Stark trying to put an AI together, um, you know, once Vision has the Mind Stone, it was more than just the stone for Thanos. It was he knew he had to be able to defeat the ideology, I guess, if you will, of the Avengers as a whole, because that was wrapped up in Vision. He kind of kept them on that philosophical straight and narrow, and so it would have been really awesome to kind of see that play out a little tighter. But the end of Age of Ultron, when he finally sees the last Ultron and has that philosophical debate, the ship of Theseus in WandaVision was fantastic. Oh, I love that.
Mm. The the,
You know,
the,
and
the argument the philosophical argument they had, and it was because you think like, okay, you're about ready to see boom boom boom, but then all of a sudden, well let me tell you, and I'm not gonna say it because you said it beautifully, and I'm not gonna try to say that, but and then they have this like ethical conversation, and then all of a sudden there's oh, okay, I got the answers, and then he actually gave him like everything he knew, and then of course we want more Paul Bettany, so we Vision, Mr. White Vision, come on over.
well, and it's going to happen. He has to, right?
Right.
Again, if you look at how he fits into the comics and everything, Vision leads the Young Avengers, and so we are totally going to see, White Vision, because one of the lines he says in that scene is that he doesn't have any memory, and then the red and green version of Vision says, yeah, actually you do. You have all the data, is what he actually says, and kind of touches his head, and he's like, I am Vision, and boom, shoots out of there. But how cool, being a theatrical guy, both of us,
Yeah.
the battleground was in a library. That was just a beautiful scene. That was my favorite scene of the entirety of it. It was all great, but that right there was like, now you're getting into the specifics. You're really getting granular with these characters,
Hmm.
and that's a great way to kind of send off and also kick off both versions of Vision, right? Because even the ship of Theseus is that idea. If you take something that exists and replace everything in it, does that still exist then, or is it something new? And so that's why he had the conversation with him, and those same elements are going to have to be brought back up in some of our upcoming movies and storylines that are coming down the pike, especially when we get into the Young Avengers. It's happening. That's maybe Phase 5. I don't know.
Phase 5.
Maybe the tail end of Phase 4, but they have to bring them in, and we will see Vision again, and that's what's really encouraging and what's really cool about Marvel in general.
Well, and there are so many good scenes in it in WandaVision. My favorite was probably the part when Vision's actually like he's confused and he's actually like, I'm scared, Wanda. And I remember just the acting of Paul Bettany talking to Wanda, and Wanda's having her self doubt, and she's like, oh no, 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 don't even worry about it. And then all of a sudden, like, it's just like no, Wanda, tell me what's going on. And I'm thinking, whoa, this is intense. And it just
Yeah.
whenever someone can be like, oh hey, we have these Marvel characters that might be typically stereotypically like silly and goofy. Let's make them real and put them in a real
Real.
situation, and then see what happens. And then, of course, even though she's the villain, of course, I do completely understand. Well, I don't understand where she's coming from, because that's a big deal. But I understand. We all understand loss, and we all deal with loss, and we
Yeah.
all deal with grief in a specific way. And she dealt with it, and sadly, she didn't know how to control her powers, and she did what she did. Now, her problem, of course, I will say, Scott, is the moment she realized what she was doing, she didn't stop, and that's what made her a real villain. She's like, no, I'm happier. I'm sorry, I can't handle this. I'm like, no, no, you don't get it. You know now. You know. So how about you let's go? I'm like, no, no, no. So it was rough.
Yeah, no, and that's whole evolution of as being a Scarlet Witch. Then, right?
Mm,
She kind of it's almost it's almost an Anakin Darth Vader scenario, right? She ceased to being Wanda and became the Scarlet Witch. It's not that Wanda's gone or dead or anything, but it's such a transformation that has to happen now. And
right.
so that's going to be very exciting as we get into the new Strange movie. Is Are they going to be a partner, or is she going to be the antagonist? It's going to be amazing how they tie that together. And Doctor Strange is going to be in the new Spider-Man movie too. And all the rumors with the different eras of Spider-Man, and it's like, to me, it's like, well, yeah, they have to do it that way. They got Doc Ock coming back. They got Green Goblin.
Yep. They have Alfred Molina, and what Green Goblin did they have?
Is Norman Osborn. So Willem Dafoe.
Oh, I sure hope it's Willem Dafoe, because Willem Dafoe is the man.
Actually, I guess it could be both. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think it could be both of them. Goblin and they have a reboot again. Yeah, and Elektra. I mean, we could go on and on. They had the Alligator Man. They had Sandman. I mean, and on and on and on. And so you're bringing kind of all those back within this context of the multiverse. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, if we're going to talk about that and we're going to start to expand on that, we've got to visit all the different multiverses. And I think now Loki, right? Loki's allowing that to happen, because now basically it's an introduction to the timeline and all the branches off of the timeline that can happen. So Loki making the single branch in 2012, that's just one of a billion of them that are starting to pop off all over. And Sylvie, allowing all those to just, it's not so much that she allowed them to happen. I think that she undid those branches that had already kind of gone and been pruned, right? She unpruned them. And there it goes, all the branches shoot off of that. And it's like, okay, setting all this possibility up, moving down now into the next phase of all this. It is brilliant. It's super fun writing.
Oh, yes.
And unpacking all of it and really thinking in that and going, okay, they can do this and they can do this and they can do this. And then you see what's coming out. Like, well, they are. So it's exciting. And they're getting into some more. I remember when Doctor Strange came out, I was like, oh, that's kind of a secondary character, within the realm, the comics and stuff, outside of, Thor, Hulk, and Iron Man and Cap. But they made him into a primary character, and he needed to be, right? And now we're going to get into some weird, like the Eternals. So that's more of the cosmic timeline, which matches up nicely with Guardians and to some degree Captain Marvel. And it's just super fun, and that they can go and explore all these different aspects of the full Marvel universe.
And as they're doing that, Scott, they're giving us little pieces of information, and I just, it would suck to be a 95-year-old person that will not be able to see the end of this whole thing. It's like, what you know what I'm saying? Like, what a stomach ache, man, just thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, gosh, I hope I live long enough to see all this. I mean, my goodness, right? So, it's really, really fun. You get into, what do we got coming up now? We've got,
we got the Shang-Chi.
Talked about Eternals a little bit.
Yep. Shang-Chi.
Yeah, Shang-Chi's coming up. And Reigns, that's pretty brilliant. And so he's going to be, wrapped up into one of the new primary within this kind of whole new evolution. So you had the first 3 phases, and now we're going to probably see 4 and 5, maybe 6, but 4 or 5 for sure is this next tier of the primary, with Shang-Chi, Doctor Strange, Scarlet Witch,
Spider-Man
will be part of that.
Yeah,
Spider-Man,
Thor.
He'll be back with Sam. And Falcon. In
Guardians, in Guardians Volume 3, is Thor going to be in that as well? Then, do you know?
He's got to be, right, because he took off
Right,
with him
right,
when we last saw him.
right.
And so yeah, so my understanding is not only is he in the new Guardians, but then the Guardians, several of them are in Love and Thunder coming out too. So it's a sweet crossover. But it has to happen. He's been in space, right?
Yeah,
He travels.
yeah,
He travels throughout the realm, space, right? And using the Bifrost, and so we just see these things start to merge, and the nice crossover with that one. We'll probably see the Guardians kind of fade away a little bit, and that's okay. They have their own thing, and what's neat is they can live in perpetuity, right? And, even if we see their next adventure in Volume 3, it's going to end with them going off and doing something. And so, if you think about it in kind of real time, they're off world. It's like they always say, Nick Fury always says, right? And to explain this character or that character, it's
right.
not any different with the Guardians. But reference, they have to be as we move through. They'll be referenced throughout, and it'll be fun. But let's talk about Mephisto.
Yes. Okay. So I put that in the picture. I don't know if it's going to have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope it does, but I put it as a picture thinking this might be the new villain for this phase. I mean, I think they'd have to do Kang eventually, but I assume since we know that Mephisto definitely is has stories with Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange. I mean, it would make the most sense for him to be in the villain. But I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they'll run him through, as well as Kang. I think Kang is probably ultimately going to be the next, the next big bad in that. But they're for sure introducing Mephisto because you're right, the tie-in with especially Doctor Strange, but also with Spider-Man.
Yes.
He had dealings with Spider-Man in the comics. And with Ghost Rider, which duh, but that would be super awesome if they kind of brought Ghost Rider once again kind of more to the forefront. And really kind of did it in on this. Well, I mean, they got Blade coming back too, right?
Yep.
So you've got kind of this idea of hell and vampires, kind of super dark. Not so much like what they've been setting up with WandaVision, dark in the sense of magic and whatnot, but like dark literally. Mephisto is literally the devil.
Yes.
And so if you're going to bring that in. You've got to bring in, Ghost Rider. You got to bring in Blade, and so we could see those as kind of like what Marvel did with Black Panther initially, brought in kind of just these different, in Ant-Man, the first Ant-Man, just these different characters, kind of secondary, but elevated them very, very quickly as primary.
Which I mean that's fine, and I think it works for a lot of things. Like you said, Doctor Strange was secondary; they kind of made him primary, and that's great. But the problem with some of these other characters, like I can't remember. You said Ant-Man. What was it? The Wasp, not Wasp. The Wasp, the Yellow Jacket, right? I think. Yeah. Like it was just. It's like there's certain elements. Like, hey, I like the actor. I like what you guys doing, but you guys needed more. And they don't. And that's kind of that was like probably half of the villains from the Marvel, all the phases. That was like probably like. And you said Ultron, and the sad thing about Ultron is, if they would have, because first of all, James Spader with that voice of his would have been perfect to keep on having these beautiful philosophical conversations like they did. The two Visions had. If there would have been more of that, but more of like a specific backstory on him, then Age of Ultron could have been a more powerful movie, but it kind of was the bastard child of the first Avengers movie because it kind of didn't allow because Loki was a good villain in the first Avengers movie, which luckily we still get to see the beautiful Tom keep going as this wonderful character that a lot of people thought he was just kind of there to kind of just be Loki, but now he gets to be part of at this time maybe the most important thing that we've found out in Marvel, which is kind of like all this stuff is so big. Like, there's one cool thing about Loki, besides Tom himself, is it's kind of doing like the Thor Ragnarok thing where it's kind of being different and spacey. It's like a time western or time and like a time action
Yeah.
adventure, but it's doing it in a way that has so much character development. I mean, I'm in love with this whole Loki loving Sylvie thing, even though it's all it might be wrong ethically. I don't even know what if you consider it wrong. If it is, probably that's another. We could have an hour conversation just about that alone. But the chemistry I'm feeling between all these characters, the story, the set design. This has probably been my favorite Marvel property so far, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah, and it goes. It's just not wide either. Right? It's deep,
Mm.
and you bring up a lot of great points within that. That idea, and if Marvel's kind of stuck on this idea, which they kind of are right now, introducing this more kind of psychological side to these characters. So Loki, right? It's funny that he falls in love with Sylvie because, in a sense, he's falling in love with himself,
It's
which we already knew he's in love with
very
himself.
egotistical and narcissist, and yeah,
And he sees class. Right? Yeah, and so and he loves all the variations, and it's like, well, yeah, because you love yourself. So that makes a lot of sense. But if you get into kind of that whole psychological setup, then it'll be interesting to see how this ends in the sense of it's almost they're setting up that he's the he's his own bad guy. I guess is the easiest way to say that.
yes,
Is all this is being done from his ego. And so if you take WandaVision and it's her sense of grief, and you take Falcon and the Winter Soldier, so Sam's trying to figure out his place, kind of his own identity, right? I mean, literally his own identity of being very strong black character and a proponent for what America stands for, and that kind of wavers a little bit. And then you look at Bucky, and he's
oh,
literally trying to figure
oh,
out where he fits. He's assassin, and even though he's been granted everything's good and everything's fine now, he can't just say, oh, okay, I guess everybody I killed over the last 70 years that just disappears too. So Marvel is really lashed into this more psychological aspect of these characters we love,
mm,
and Loki's no different. It starts off of him doing his spinning his tricks, and what was really evident about halfway through episode 2 was his old tricks don't work.
right,
Like everybody knows, right? I'm burdened with glorious purpose, and everybody's like, nobody cares.
right,
Bye.
right,
And,
right. When
and
they're holding the Infinity Gems,
oh,
it's
that was fantastic.
yeah,
The drawer of all the gems and the look on his face. Beautiful scene. And to me, I burst out laughing. I was like, no way did Marvel just do that. But it was brilliant.
oh, I
It
know,
just kind of knocked some of the wind out of the power of those. And I'm like, well, that kind of sucks. But then it's like, well, no, because again, psychologically, we as humans, we always talk about how certain things are so important, and that's such a big aspect of our life, only to find out later it really just kind of wasn't. It was a part of our life and our path, but it wasn't as big a deal as we made it out to be. And that's been really fun to see those connections within these TV shows, and then pointing right at this whole new slate of these movies coming up. And it
mm,
sounds like Black Widow talks about that, right? The sister relationship between her and Yelena, and mom and dad, right? Iron Maiden and Red Guardian. And once again, we all have dysfunction in our lives, in our families, and elements of those things. And how do we work through those? And they're exploring that a lot more. It's beautiful.
oh, what you're pretty much saying in a beautiful way is they found the way to make the human experience available in this big old franchise of movies with even though they're fictional characters, we brought some weight to them and said, hey, you need to deal with this situation the same way we do. And when you watch it, it's the best way to engage with anything. And luckily, we've come from corny, silly superhero and I would not say bad, dare say bad, but you see something like Adam West's Batman, and you're thinking, okay, that's where they were in the '60s, and good for them. And then here we are now, the best thing about these characters is they, all of their situations have emotional weight, and I was just that part in Falcon and Winter Soldier. Whenever I think it was in the very first, it was in the fourth episode, very beginning of the fourth episode, and I forget the the guard for Black Panthers people, the Wakandas. What's the?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay, but when she comes in there, she kind of puts that little chant, and she like does that chant that kind of heals him almost. And you've seen Sebastian Stan, he's crying, and you're seeing this beautiful acting.
Savoy Paco. You are free. You're free.
Coming from him, and I'm like, oh, I don't think I've ever seen you really do anything like that before. And it was a great way to kind of show, like, we've been watching this character since the first Avenger, and then all of a sudden we see him with more weight on him with Winter Soldier, and then he's kind of just this sad, cursed person who kind of has to deal like this John Rambo life where he's just, I've seen things and I've done things and I have no peace. And then luckily throughout this whole thing, we get to see him have that peace. And it was, Winter Soldier, to be honest with you, Scott, I never really found the Winter Soldier to be as interesting as some of the other characters, but I felt like the show was able to make him much more interesting. And then I love Anthony Mackie, the actor, but I kind of feel the same way about Falcon sometimes. But I remember in Winter Soldier, Falcon, Sam was so great how he kind of was like, "Hey, Captain America, I'm Sam, and I see you're dealing with stuff. Come talk to come hang out with us." And I thought, well, this is what it's all about again. Like you said it a little while ago, all these people, all these superheroes are not sitting there just, hey, I'm here to save you, and once I'm done, I'm going home, and I'm going to have a great day. No, it's showing them like, hey, there are consequences to all these things that we've done, good and bad. And I'm tired and I'm broken and I have to keep on continuing on like everything's okay, but it's not okay. So it's been refreshing.
Right. Oh, very much so. Well, even the part where, again, the gal comes up and detaches his arm, right? The fail safe that on it drops off, and he was like, "Why'd you do that? Why did you put that in there?" But again, it just shows this idea that what makes him powerful is this physical, tangible thing, but without it, how are you going to get by, right? And so at that moment, he's like, I'm nothing without my arm. But he realizes that he really is, because going back to the scene you just mentioned at the beginning where she healed him with, going through the different phrases from the book, right? The Red Book. And he finally is free of that. And now he's the White Wolf and in Wakanda. And how those two tie together, you said it beautifully, Nick, is just this idea of, they're exploring deeper into and making them real characters, and it's not superficial. I think we can all thank probably Christopher Nolan for that with Batman, because that's the first time we kind of saw that breakaway from the comic booky interpretations of everything. Just because they're a comic book character does not mean they have to be the stereotype and that trope of cheesy, over the top, and and that, man, all three of those movies super dark, but they got into the psyche and they got into the person, and that just unlocked everything. I think Marvel was finally like, yes, this gives substance to that. and they could really bring all those characters to life, right? Because we learn about Tony Stark in the very beginning of that, of the first Iron Man. I mean, right off the bat, we learn about Tony Stark. We don't learn about Iron Man,
Nope.
right?
Nope.
It opens up with his genius and how he grew up, and
Him kind of being
from his dad and
kind of
all
be a
this. So
self-centered prick too. Yeah, yeah. He's definitely like kind of a. He's also like and that's another thing too about these characters too is a lot of them were kind of like that in the first place, or like they had these faults, and
Yes.
there's nothing better than saying, hey, you have these faults, but you can still be the hero from
Mhm.
within. And then as you know, of course, that's like all of our journeys and all of our goals is to be the hero from within. And from great power comes from great responsibility, all that kind of stuff. Is all these things kind of mesh, and then you have these storytellers. Some a little more misses, but most of them are pretty big hits. Where it's just like, hey, you guys nailed it. You guys gave me the emotional punch, not just a big old action fest. I don't want a Michael Bay movie. I want a James Cameron movie. So,
Oh no, that's exactly right. Yeah, and so they just keep getting deeper and deeper into that, right? And they gave some emotional weight to all the first, that first tier of the heroes. All were just brilliant, and there's different ideas about how people take all of them. It should have been Captain America, not Tony Stark, who did the final snap to bring everything back. Okay, that could be debated, or they shouldn't have brought Captain America back as an old man. But I found that to be absolutely necessary if we're going to again talk about time travel. And you can go on and on, but that's what sticks, and that's why we go to the movies, right? We like to see crap blow up, but we also want to know and feel and be part of those characters' worlds, and that's what's the evolution of Marvel has always kind of been as they dig a little deeper, and expanding it into these TV shows now to really hone in on that because you can on small screen, right? I mean that's what TV was all about, and I think that's why WandaVision was set up with the different eras of the different TV shows is because television, right? When it first came about, was a way to see these characters that you would normally see on a stage before that time, or just hear their voice on radio. Now you get to see them. You get to see another person, or maybe a mirror of yourself. And so television has always been that vehicle for those things to happen. So for WandaVision to go through those first 4 or 5 episodes, four episodes like that, that was a stroke of genius in the way they just set that up, and then they just drop you into her whole psyche. And even you almost got to be part of Vision because Vision's wandering around going, now I don't even know my place. I don't know why is this happening? And you had to keep kind of reminding yourself, this is her interpretation of everything. Tommy and Billy running around. That was wild. Again, setting up Young Avengers, but in the comics, it was the same thing. In the comics, they killed the kids. You don't do that. You don't show that on film. But we'll see that, and you hear Tommy screaming out for his mom on that last in credit scene of Vision was I'm like, of course, that's perfect. And they did that was a direct homage to the comics because that was written that way too, and she kind of resurrected him and with her magic, and then he becomes Wiccan in the Young Avengers. So it's a blast. All this is just a blast. I'm glad I get to be a part of this. I have these conversations with my kids, mostly Armida too, but to get in deep and really get into somebody else who's like crazy, it's just fun. It's all for fun, right? And then you get dorky and it's nerdy, and I don't care. I'll do the same with Star Wars because it brings kind of that childlike aspect back. Star Wars. I was a kid when they first came out, and then I read the comics with these Marvel characters, and never in a million years would I thought they would have, really done them justice. Like, they had the cheesy TV shows in the '70s and '80s with Spider-Man and Captain America. But they were the cheesy rendition of the comic stereotype, right?
Yeah.
But for them to just really reimagine that and do it up like they have been, it's just been beyond my wildest dreams. I'm like a kid again. It's fun.
Yeah, the whole thing's been great, and I'm excited to find out more about Phase 4, and then because we're right in the beginning, so we have a lot more to encompass, and maybe we can our next, or maybe a few times later, we can talk about the end of Phase 4 or whatnot. We'll pick something else for the next one, but yeah, we'll have to do this again very soon, my friend.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I love it, Nick. Thank you.
Of course, my friend. And everyone, thanks for watching. And next week we have my nephew Caden. We're going to talk about Mortal Kombat, so enjoy that. And again, Pyro Run, William Hammond Boyce Jr., August 14th, 8 a.m. if you want to run there, or virtual run, do whatever. But go to pyroswings.com and help a new pilot get his wings quicker. Anyways, thank you, Scott, for everything, my friend, and we'll do this again very soon.
Sounds great. Love it. Thanks, Nick. I appreciate the nerd frenzy. Keep it up, pal.
All right, take care, buddy. Take care, everyone.
The Nerd Frenzy Podcast.